He was just yelling and being annoying. I'm like, I really don't want to be on this call. Please, this is gonna take the patience of God to deal with this man. Thanks for joining me again. If you don't know me, my name is Jasmine. This is my second channel, Jasmine Baker 2, where I do the occasional story time. I also do TV commentary. You guys seem to like those, so I am going to be bringing those back. I try to do one of those a month and one story time a month. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this video. It really helps me out. I do appreciate everybody that watches this channel. I know we are a very small audience right now, but I always have some interesting conversations with you guys here and on Instagram. If you want to follow me, it's jasminebaker.artist. I specialize in realistic drawings of people. Realistic, unlike the expectations of this call center job. So that is something that I have been doing for quite a few years now. There is a dog trying to get into my room. If you hear any random noises in the background, it's my cats. I threw out some snacks randomly for them, so it's keeping them occupied instead of climbing all over me. These are the 2 times I almost got fired, or as I like to call, the Call Center Chronicles. I don't know if there's even any useful information in this video, but don't work a place, especially retail, where you're not really going to advance, and don't put all of your effort and energy into a place that does not really care about you. A call center is not the way. If you want to have a job just so you can have some money in the meantime before you get a job that you really actually want, I mean, work at a call center. It's probably not a bad idea. If you have a heartbeat, they will hire you. Okay. I'm back. Sorry, I had to like stop recording. The neighbors were arguing and it was ghetto. That's all I'm gonna say. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the 2 times where I almost got fired. And they were not my fault, at least I don't think so. You can debate in the comments if you want to and argue about that once you have all the details. And then come to a logical opinion. If you saw my messy coworker story time, then you sort of know what type of work environment this is. Now this was way back before I did web chat. So when I first started working at the call center, I'd say like the first couple of years, I was on the phones, and I absolutely hated it. This first story happened in my first year of working at this place. If I remember correctly, my supervisor at the time was moving to another department or something, and my team was introduced to a new one. She seemed really nice at first. I like to observe people and watch how they act. She seemed nice at first. Isn't that the start of every suspenseful drama movie? I need a name for this lady. Let's call her Linda. I was not the only person who disliked her. I don't know what it is about new supervisors, but when they are new, they act brand new. Like they start writing everybody up. What is with the power trip? You make like $1 more an hour. Wait, no, you don't make more per hour. You're on salary, so you actually make less money than me because the agents could make unlimited commission. Let's be real, I never got a bonus in that department, but you know what I'm saying? It's definitely not the money. We had these things called follow-ups. These are like little tasks and reminders that you create when you have to call somebody back, because we were at a call center where you couldn't have your average call time be over 9 minutes at the end of the month, so you really had to try and manage that and average out your calls, and sometimes you had to cut calls short and call people back just to make your call time, your incoming call time, lower. And in order to do that, you sometimes had to make a follow-up, or if you had to put in a ticket for something, or if you're waiting on a refund that you're supposed to give a customer, then you can create a follow-up so that you can contact them and let them know if the credit was denied or not. I absolutely hated doing those. I hated calling people back. I wanted to get stuff reserved on, or get things resolved on the first call so that I wouldn't have to call people back. The outgoing calls to get back in contact with someone was just as bad as the incoming ones. I hated it. You're gonna hear me say that a lot, but I hated this job. I hated it. And then at the end of these 2 stories, I will tell you why I stayed there, because I stayed there for a few reasons. So with follow-ups, you set up the day and the time that you're gonna call somebody back, and then this little thing pops up in your call manager software thing that says you have this follow-up, or this follow-up is almost due, or it'll tell you that it's like almost time for you to call this person. I procrastinated like it was my job. I was constantly changing the times. Unless the person was really set on me calling them at a specific time, I would just move the follow-ups around and just like push them out to 2 weeks or whatever, push them out another 4 or 5 days, hope that the customer calls back before I have to call them. Now remember, this is an inbound call center. Pretty much anybody that has worked at an inbound call center knows that that you have to stay in the ready state. The client pays the project to take incoming calls and to be in ready state. This falls under online compliance. Online compliance is basically that. It's just you being ready to take calls all the time. Whenever you go into not ready, or if you're in a not ready state, that really affects your stats negatively. You are expected to be taking calls when your shift starts. You had to actually be at work earlier than you needed to be in order to find a seat, which also ties in with the story. Put a pin in that. You could not clock in too early to do your follow-ups. The most you could clock in was 5 minutes, but if you were clocked in 5 minutes early, that is when you had to be taking calls. Pay very close attention. You're expected to do your follow-ups before your shift starts or between incoming calls, which is also impossible since during the holiday time when this event that I'm about to tell you happened, it was back-to-back calls. I'm talking 1,200 to 1,500 calls in queue just at our location all day long. The call floor was totally full of people, and the desks that were not occupied were not operable, so people would take the chairs from those desks. There were quite a few computers on this floor that did not work, and when you have over 100 agents on the floor, 10 down computers is not a good thing. I would sometimes clock in early. I would do 1 or 2 follow-ups just so I could get rid of them. I don't care if it affected my online compliance or not. I just wanted to get those, close them out, and have the next poor victim deal with that customer. People will really call at 2 a.m. to set up internet TV. I wish that I were making this up, but people would call us at the weirdest times to discuss their bill, to dispute a charge, to buy $1,500 in adult movies. This was a sales department, but it was also customer service, so we still had to help them with their issues, but also make a sales goal, but also troubleshoot, sell to them, but also make sure you resolve all their problems on the first call, sell to them, but also disconnect their service because they don't want to be with us anymore, also sell to them. By the way, having sales and customer service in the same department was a terrible idea. I want to know the genius that came up with that. It was impossible to make a bonus regularly there because it was customer service. You had to focus on fixing the customer's issue and then totally forget everything else that you're supposed to do because you get so wrapped up in trying to resolve whatever the customer is asking you or whatever they need help with. I got a lot of weird stuff with people, and oftentimes I got really stuck, and since I have anxiety, I would panic at work. That was not good. That's a whole story in itself. It was true madness at a call center with people calling for holiday deals. I hated working during that time. Yes, it was more money because they were trying to make us do mandatory overtime, and it was supposed to be more sales, but I despised working during that time of the year also because, like I said earlier, it was stressful dealing with people and finding a place to sit. They scheduled too many people to work mandatory overtime. You had these waves of employees arriving earlier than their normal shift. When people's shifts were overlapping, there was nowhere to sit. Sometimes I didn't even work that overtime. Like if they wanted me to come to work at 2 o'clock and my shift was at 2:30 or 3, I would come at 2:30 or 3. You can't legally force anyone to work overtime. They can probably fire you for it, but they never did. I did have a friend, she never worked the mandatory overtime. It was pretty funny. If they had anything to say about it, they could fight me. They never did. It's not that serious. Now that you have all of that information, I can tell you about this specific day where I could absolutely not find a seat. I played this game of musical chairs that I dreaded every day, or it didn't have like the phone software, or something stupid happened. It was really ghetto. You'd think with this multi-million-dollar company that I worked for that they could afford enough computers, enough working computers, okay? They have to be operable for you to do your job. You think that they would be able to afford to have those up and running, especially during a holiday season when it's horribly busy. It was fun, you know, walking around a call floor that probably held 100 agents to not find a seat because they want to move everybody's schedules around. I did not find a seat until after my shift had already started. By the time 2:30 rolled around, I actually had to clock in using my swipey badge on the wall because they had these little Chronos machines on the wall. So I did that because I didn't want to be late, because I was not late. I eventually got tired of walking around, was just standing there. On top of that, there was not a supervisor available to find me a seat. Everybody was just busy. Understandable. A lot of people want supervisors this time of year. There was a lot of supervisors that were taking calls. There was a lot of supervisors' assistants that were busy. If the assistants are busy, usually the supervisor will take the calls because there was so much of an overflow few of those customers that wanted managers for, people usually want a manager for a really stupid reason. Like 90% of the time it was a stupid reason. So I pretty much just waited for someone to leave in order to get a desk. That means by the time I started working, I had so many follow-ups that needed to be done. After a couple of hours of working, I tried looking through these follow-ups while on a call with other customers. That's how busy I was. I did not have time to do anything. You don't have time to just sit there and not be on the phone and trying to do additional work. They don't allow for that. That's not productive to them. That's not billable time to the client for them. You're basically being like a waste of money at that point. I'm a person that multitasks, so on one computer screen, I would be on the active call with the customer, and on the other computer screen, I had one of my follow-ups pulled up and that customer's account and all of their contact information pulled up so that I could call them within the 30 seconds that I was allowed to after the active call ended. That's how I had to work, and it was very difficult. Our computer software had this thing where you can put yourself into not ready. Let's say you ended a call with a customer, you put yourself in not ready, or you put yourself in work ready, I'm sorry, and that gives you, I think, 15 seconds or 30 seconds. It's a very, very small amount of time, and it just flies by just like that. You have to be ready to either take another call or ready to call a person back. So you have to prepare that. Before, it logged me out of the call system thing. It was ridiculous. If you go into work ready and then you don't take a call, you have to put yourself into not ready if you need additional time, so that will negatively affect your performance. Putting you into not ready, I think did it for about 15 seconds, and then it will log you out. So it will close you out of your phone menu thing that you need to make calls. That was fun. It basically puts you into a bad percentage when you do that. You try to work in that frenzied state. It was awful. That was a lot of the reason why I had anxiety at that job, because I didn't really have enough time to do my job. I got into the habit of not setting up follow-ups for people. When my calls were ending, I put myself into that not ready state. By the time I found the person's number to dial, it had logged me out, and I believe I just dialed on the actual phone, not the phone thing that's on the computer. I dialed on the physical phone. This ordeal happened several times throughout this entire day, but I had to get these follow-ups done. There were certain time restricted things that I needed to finish. My online compliance was just horrible for that day. I think I was so far behind that day that I still had to postpone some of the callbacks. It was getting too late in the day, and all of the customers in this project, they were all on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, and they were, I think, 2 or 3 hours ahead. They really didn't want us calling customers back any later than 7 p.m. unless the customer requested a specific time. Later that day, around 6 or 7 p.m. our time, Linda decides to pull me into a meeting. We had these weekly meetings that every manager is supposed to have with each agent. It's a one-on-one meeting to go over your numbers and whatever other help your management can provide you. She shows me my online compliance report for the day and tells me that my compliance is quite low due to constantly logging out to avoid getting calls. She explains that we bill the client for incoming calls that we can take so that the client pays us. Like I don't already know that. I tell her everything where I fell behind. Not my fault. I don't think that's my fault. They shouldn't be letting us make follow-ups if they're not gonna give us time to do the follow-ups. You see what I'm saying? She proceeds to say,
I have to report this to the on-site manager. With these numbers, it's not looking good. We have a call avoidance policy that can result in a final written notice.
Which basically means that she was ready to fire me. I will say I did everything to avoid making follow-ups after that happened. I had very few after that because I was not about to work before clocking in. No, I don't think so. I avoided talking to her after that meeting ended. So I get to work the next day. I go to HR and then I talk to the on-site manager about the issue that I'm having with my new supervisor. She is probably 1 week into being a supervisor for me, just fresh. He asked what my supervisor's name is. I realized she hadn't reported this to him yet. I actually beat her to it. I told him about everything with the seating and I was really frustrated, and I said I'm falling behind in my work because I can't find a seat. He says, okay, don't worry, I'll talk to her. And guess what? She didn't fire me. I'm pretty sure she didn't like me after that. I don't know what happened with that interaction, but maybe you shouldn't have been acting so brand new, like you knew what was going on and people other than me couldn't find seats. This was not just a me problem. I'm not making this up, because she acted like she didn't know that the whole not finding a seat thing was a huge issue. When your entire job is on the computer, literally everything you do at this job was on the computer except eating lunch. I feel like supervisors were largely unaware of a lot of things. Actually pretty aggravating. You work for the company and you get here before I do normally, so don't sit there and act as if you don't see employees walking around the entire call floor. It wasn't just 1 to 2 days that this was happening. She didn't like me very much after that. I don't care if people don't like me, but she barely talked to me until our team got another supervisor. She did not manage us for that long, which was fabulous. Okay, the second time I got fired is actually more ridiculous than the first story. Also with the new supervisor, people on my team were getting written up left and right for everything. I had a feeling I was next. I knew that it was just a matter of time. I was in the same department in 2016. I had to actually leave a project that was closing. So from 2014 to 2015, I was in the first project. I actually got invited to move over to a business project that was on the same floor, but it was a very, very small group of people. I think it was maybe 20 people, if that. I really liked that. I'll tell you why in a second, but I really liked working there. Even though it was taking calls, it was definitely a whole different environment. It was just managed differently. I don't know how to explain it. We had a different on-site manager for that little small group of people. That was good for me at the time, even though the client decided to close it after, I think I was in that project for about 6 months. We ended up getting dispersed to other departments, so we actually had to choose which other department we wanted to go to once this one closed. In 2016, that project closed, so I ended up going back to the first project. I really should have just went over to sales, like the separate sales department that they had in this building. Nothing good came out of me returning back to the old department. I only did that because it was the most familiar to me. I was really nervous about learning something new. And then I knew that there was going to be a separate client project arriving in a few months, so I'm like, I'm not going to be here very long. Let me just get through this. I figured I'll just do my time there for those few months until the new project came to the site. I'm saying it like it was prison, but yes, that's why. So I worked there for a few months. Hated every minute of it, just as much as the first time, if not more. I severely regretted not going with option number 2, which was sales. Like just sales, not customer service. Fortunately, that did not go on for very long. And I'm going to tell you about the day that I almost got fired in the same project. I had a couple of people that were from the business team that ended up going where I was, so there were a few people that I still recognized. I want to say within the first 2 to 3 weeks, my teammate told me, I got written up last week. Did you know that there's like 3 other people on our team that got final written notices already? And I was like, no, I did not, but I'm scared now. He's right up happy. Great. That means I'll probably get written up too. Just a matter of time. I had a call this one day where this customer was yelling at me for some order that he placed on a previous day or something, and he really wanted a supervisor. I think he was porting in his number to us from another company. He was just yelling and being annoying. I'm like, I really don't want to be on this call. Please, this is going to take the patience of God to deal with this man. The project had moved to a different room, so it was this really big, long, narrow room, and there were rows of desks instead of these little sections or pods or whatever they're called. If you stood up, you could see everybody on the floor. You could see if there were coaches, assistants. You could see which supervisors were available. He was just being so annoying. I told the customer that I was going to get him a supervisor. I said, hold on, I'm going to leave my seat and I'm going to go get you a supervisor. I got up from my seat, left the headset there because it was a corded one, and I walked to the other side of the room where the supervisors had their assistant. Call them soup calls. I'm going to say that because it's a lot shorter. They get paid a little bit more than us to deal with the irate customers that magically change their tone of voice once they reach the supervisor that they're talking to. They treat the agents like crap, but once they get to somebody who's higher up, they turn into a whole different person. I was walking to one of the assistants I know. I was walking to him for help, and actually I think he was the only assistant that was over there at the time. So I'm walking over to him, and the supervisor, there's like one sitting at the end of the aisle, and she stops me. She's sitting, and she asks me what the issue is. I tell her what's going on, and then she says,
okay, well, you need to talk to one of the soup assistants for that.
I said I was doing that, and I walked over to him, told him what was going on. It was a ridiculous call. If I could de-escalate it, I would, and I wouldn't have come over here. I was probably away from my desk for about 3 minutes at the most. I don't even think I was gone for that long. So he agreed to take the call. I go back to my desk to check in on the customer. I think I was trying to get the person's contact number number so that the soup assistant could call him back. Something like that. I put on my headset when I get back to my desk and I realized there's a different customer on the line. So somebody else had called in. The guy hung up. All of that happened in the very, very short time that I was away from my desk. The first customer had disconnected. I don't think he had an account yet, so I didn't have a contact number. The assistant says to leave notes on the order because I believe I just pulled up the order that he had. I did that. Fast forward to the next day, I get told by my supervisor to log out of my computer for a meeting. Me having anxiety, I feel like I've done something wrong every time I'm told to do that. Even 8 years later when they ask me to go into a meeting, I still feel that same anxiety. And it was because of this moment. I'm in the meeting with him. He asked if I remember this call from yesterday. He starts explaining it and I said yes. I told him what happened, that I talked to both a supervisor and an assistant to get help. He proceeds to inform me that the client, the project client, was listening in on this call. Then the client told him that I needed to be fired for call avoiding, or so he says. This is how he's relaying this whole scenario to me. All because I did not tell the customer that I was leaving my desk for X amount of time. And I forgot to tell the customer, so I didn't set the expectation. The customer called back and claimed that I hung up on him when I really had no way of reaching him. He didn't have a callback number. My coach says,
well, I understand, but I talked to the client and they really wanted me to let you go. But I explained to him that you are a good employee, and since this has never happened before, you don't have a habit of it, I can give you an automatic final written notice.
Gee, thanks. Guys, this final written notice, it had no expiration date. Sometimes they have like a 1 month or a 3 month final written or something like that, so you can't screw up during that probationary period. Your final notice and don't screw up again or we'll kick you out. No matter how long you are in this department, if you mess up at all, even a little bit, we are firing you. I cried when I got home. Don't act like your job has never made you cry. Mostly I just cried because I needed the job. I didn't have a lot of skills at the time. There's not a lot of jobs that I could do when I have social anxiety, and I was really inexperienced and I hated dealing with people directly, mostly for reasons like this. And my face looks like this all the time. That triggers people, or they think I have some kind of attitude. I was really mad, so after all that happened, I got into web chat, and then I ended up changing to a different web chat project that was sales, never having to speak to a customer. I tolerated that for a few years, and then I just quit my job in November of this year, or November of last year. Even that sales web chat was getting to be a lot. I was in that department for, I think I was in there for three and a half, 4 years. There was a lot of stuff that was changing. There was a lot of stuff that was getting really frustrating. Eventually, you know, enough is enough. You get burned out, you get bored. Nobody wants to sit all day for 8 or 9 hours when you're normally like a person who gets up out of their seat every 2 or 3 minutes. That is not a job that you want to be in if you have an attention problem. So those are the 2 stories of when I almost got fired and those managers tried me. I can't say that I would ever want to be a supervisor. I don't like managing and keeping track of people. You would have to like take other people's calls or fire them or like call the person and be like, why are you not coming to work? I'm not about that life. I told you this was kind of a long story. I'll try and think of some more stories. There was a lot of stuff that happened at this call center. I don't ever want to go back to doing that. I would rather be cleaning houses like I'm doing now. It's more tolerable. You almost never talk to the customers because they're usually doing stuff in other rooms, working or whatever, or they're out of the house. You clean their house, you get paid, you leave. It's mentally easier. A lot of people say that physical jobs are too draining. I find that mental jobs are just every bit as draining as a physical job, and it's just too much for some of us. Thanks for watching. I am going to Comic-Con again in September. I have plans to do that. I also have a Comic-Con video coming probably next month. It's taking some work to put together. I really loved going there. I wish I could have stayed for all 3 days, but that was my first time being a vendor, but I will tell you guys all the details in that video. Please subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you get notified every time I upload. I will see you guys next time. Bye. No, that's probably better. This? I don't know. And I look really yellow for some reason. I'm not sure why. That's okay, I guess. It's as good as it's gonna get.
One of my main goals with Megan has been trying to get her to take ownership of her own health care. I'm not gonna yell at you, just say yes or no.
Not all of it, but I need to walk out.
What do you do when a doctor states facts and calls you out on your eating habit?
I can't believe this.
The only logical thing, throw a freaking tantrum.
Kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Megan is not doing well. We are in full meltdown mode.